In this video, I'd like to take some time to talk about how you might respond to what you read. That's a pretty broad statement, and that gives you some freedom in your summary response paper to decide how you would like to respond to the article you've chosen. What aspects of it do you want to talk about? That's going to be entirely up to you. The key is to read carefully, to think about what you read, to focus in on parts that interest you, whether it's because you agree with them or disagree with them, or can talk about your own experience. So what I'd like to do is use as an example the screen time essay that we read last week, and I will think about that article as though I were going to write about it for my summary response essay.
Do I know about the topic of screen time? What do you know about it? Surely we've all heard someone, whether a friend, relative, or someone on the news, talking about how much is too much screen time. Maybe you've had this conversation yourself with your parents, with your friends, with your own children. Now, we could be talking about TV here, video games, social media apps, anything basically that you do on a screen. There are now built-in apps, as you can see here on the left, to measure your screen time. I have one and I don't even think I set it up. I think Apple did it for me. So you can even set it up so that apps you know you're prone to using a lot can have a time limit and lock you out after a period of time so that you can tear yourself away from Instagram or TikTok or whatever and do your homework or take a walk, or as some of us might need a reminder these days, take a shower, eat breakfast, because time is strange now. Now, of course, as you can see in the picture where it says time limit, you've reached your time limit on Instagram, you can simply ignore the warning or basically hit a snooze button, which I'm notorious for when it comes to my alarm in the morning. So I don't know if that setting would actually help me. That takes self-control that I don't have. Maybe you do. Now, the weekly report on screen time that you see in the bottom left-hand corner, that, like I said, is something that I do have. It tells me each week, my phone and my iPad, how much time I've been spending at my screen, whether my usage has gone up or down, and then I have to decide what I think about that. So I could turn off this setting and I would no longer have Apple telling me about my reports, and maybe that would be wise. But I remain curious, like many. How much time do I spend on a screen? Am I spending too much time? Now, as I did some background research online to see what kinds of conversations were happening about this, I found that while there's a sense of screen time awareness certainly being important for everyone, we as a society are especially concerned with how much time children spend on electronic devices and how it affects them. One of the possible articles you can choose to write about for your summary response deals with that. In fact, Screen Use Tied to Children's Brain Development by Perry Class. So whether you have children or not, you've probably heard different debates about how much screen time is healthy for them and what kind of screen activity is okay. And if you do a search on Google, like I did for screen time, lots of almost fear-inducing imagery comes up. So you can see, now this is just a simple question that perhaps we all want answers to. How much screen time is too much? But you see this child here who looks sad and frightened with bags under his eyes that look more like he stayed up all night writing a term paper. So there's this representation of the fear that we're allowing children to spend too much time at their screens, whether it's a TV screen or a phone. So I think this graphic is even more, sending its message quite loudly. Digital heroine. How too much screen time affects kids. I'm not sure that comparing phones to heroin is completely apt, but is there an argument to be made for the addictive properties of digital media? Yes, most likely. And there are plenty out there, and maybe that's even a topic that you choose to pursue. So this initial research I've done, and you don't have to do any research for your summary response paper, but this just basically confirms some of the cultural dialogues I've already been exposed to, that I know many people worry about how much screen time is too much, if it's bad for your physical health, your mental health, and specifically, is it bad for children? I know that that's a hot debate, and so I keep that in mind as I approach this article that we read that offers a different argument, not a fearful one, but a challenge to a lot of these conceptions of too much screen time and screen time as digital heroin. So now it's time for me to look closely at what are these authors saying about their topic and how can I summarize their argument for myself and for my reader so that they can understand where these authors are coming from and their approach to this debate. After the summary, you and your reader know what the article's about, and so we can now focus on you and your opinions relating to the article and its topic, your observations, your writing. How will you respond to what you've read? What do you want to share with your reader? What have you been thinking about while you read this, since you've read this? And how are you going to get someone else interested in thinking about these ideas too? Well, that's where you join the conversation as a writer. You're a living, breathing person who has thoughts about the world, thoughts about what you read, and you have every right and reason to join the dialogue as a writer. That's what all writers do. Professional writers. Someone has always written before them. Nobody is ever the first one, to write about something. Most ideas have been discussed before, but we bring our angle in. We bring our voice in. So most writers are responding to other writers in some way. The trick is, and I can't give you a blanket answer for this, is to figure out what you want to focus on. I've given you some questions on the assignment instructions and here to get you thinking, to help you brainstorm, and maybe you should make lists of possibilities of what you could talk about. Look at the notes you've taken on the article. What did you highlight? What were you curious about? Maybe actually talk to somebody about this article, me or your classmates, and see where your thoughts go, right? You can't talk about everything in the article. So your job is to focus in on what you feel like responding to. So some possible questions you might consider to help you come up with ideas. First and foremost, well, what interested you about the article? Why does the topic of this article even matter? What made you pick it? Why do you think it's relevant to our society, to our time? Can you connect the article to yourself or to your world in some way? What other issues did it maybe make you think about that the authors didn't discuss, but you can connect back to it? Did you agree or disagree with the author? Why or why not? Now, you would not try to address all of those questions in your paper. Those are possibilities. The key is that this part of the paper, after your summary, this is all you. You should refer to specific things the author said, but you are talking back now. You are giving your insight and opinion. Now, if we take a look at some possibilities, these are just based on some of the thoughts I had as I was reading. These are ways I could develop my response paragraphs. So one point of connection, one actual paragraph in my paper, could be about how I think I make use of my screen time. Because part of the focus of the screen time article is that we really don't know what everyone is doing on their screens at any given moment. So to measure our use of technology by the amount of time we spend with it is not perhaps the best assessment. We should instead be looking at, well, how do people use these tools? Do they use them creatively? Do they use them to keep in contact with one another? Is it entertainment? And is that not enough? So here I might talk about my own experiences in general, or maybe even particularly now, as we, through the pandemic or more distant from each other, have, time on our hands maybe we didn't have before. What are we doing with our screens? And that might be worth connecting back to the article. Then I probably still need another paragraph at that point, and so I might address some other part of the article that sparked a thought in me. So when they talk about an idea for how to measure our use of digital media, they began to discuss a concept called the screenome, which is like the genome. And so they think rather than measuring the value or dangers of digital media by the time, we would instead look at the actual usage. But in order to measure that, in order to have some kind of conclusive scientific study, we would need to have researchers collect data from us, right, for what they would call a human screenome project. And so in another paragraph, I might think about, would I be willing to participate in that? Would I be willing to give up even more of my data than I already do in order to help with a study about the usefulness, the real maybe ramifications of digital media in our lives? Would I want to participate in that? And just kind of thinking broadly about that idea, what are the ramifications of providing that kind of data? Now, we already know, or if you don't, you should know, that all the apps we use, they provide a lot of data that maybe, we're not aware of, that we don't always know where it goes unless you read all that fine print. But this would be a project that maybe I would be willing to give my screen usage data to, but only if it was guaranteed that it would be used for this purpose only and not sold to advertisers or something like that, which already happens with my data because every time I'm on Facebook, they advertise something I just looked at on another webpage. So that could be a whole paragraph in my paper too. The response section is entirely dependent upon what you want to talk about, so long as you connect it back to the essay that you're responding to in some way. So just to give you an idea of further things you can consider, these are just some more questions to challenge you as you come up with your response. Think about what new ideas or insights that the article you've read has given you. Does it challenge or support some of the beliefs and opinions or experiences that you have with the topic, and how? Again, do you agree with the author? How they make their points, what points they make, why or why not? What connections can you draw between what you learned and other things you know, again, or things you have experienced? And a kind of a broad question, which might be a really good question to address in your conclusion: in what way or ways does this essay, this article you read, help you to better understand the different roles that technology plays in our lives? So these are all optional prompts for your response section of your essay, but after you write the summary, it's all you, right? What you want to focus on. Now, the question may be at this point, how do you write those response paragraphs? Well, I can't give you one specific formula because at this point in your writing, you really want to try to break away from this idea that all academic essays need to be 5 paragraphs and then follow the same structure. Now, some strategies are definitely tried and true. And in the modules, I do go over how to formulate a good paragraph in general. But as far as your individual response paragraphs, you designed them to express your insights, and you need to take ownership of how you write and present your ideas. In general, though, I would say the response section of your paper, which comes after your summary, should be anywhere from 2 to 3 paragraphs, and then you'd have your conclusion. You could focus on primarily one main element of the article that stuck out to you, or you might address several points. The key is that you move away from summary. The summary is short, 100 to 200 words, and now you join the conversation. You've read the article, you've thought about it, you've proved that you understood it by summarizing it, and now it's time for you to have your say on the topic at hand. Now, it's helpful to quote and paraphrase specific elements of the article that you want to respond to, And later in the module, we take a look at how do you do that, but don't overload your paragraph with quotes. Your voice should dominate. These are your insights that have simply been sparked by the article you read. You can focus on simply agreeing or disagreeing with aspects and explaining why, or you can connect other knowledge and experience that you have to some parts of the article. So although I prompted you with some questions throughout this video and in the assignment instructions, you don't have to address any of them, and certainly not all of them. Focus on what the article makes you think of, what interests you about it, what angers you about it, whatever it is, the ideas that it raises for you. This is meant to be an exploratory assignment. Don't feel that your thesis statement has to be the most earth-shattering thesis ever. I simply want to see you engage with the article. And in the next essays, we'll build on this and develop even more critical approaches to analyzing sources that you're going to use in your research. For this essay, don't do any outside research. This is you really thinking deeply about one article that you're choosing out of the list I've given you.